Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
This is News for the Heart, and I'm joined here with Victoria Lorient-Faibish. You have an excellent book. Let me try and do this properly this time. Find Your Self-Culture, Moving Away from Depression and Anxiety to Monumental Self-Acceptance. And I love that, we'll talk about this. I know we talked about it in our last episode, but we're going to talk all about relationships today, so this is going to be exciting.
That's a good one.
And there are controversies, and we will discuss those, because I think some of them are age-related, but it nevertheless, or people-related. But we're going to talk about relationships, of course, with all the stuff that's been going on in the skies, and we're between two eclipses. People's stuff have been coming up. All this drama has been here. We are definitely experiencing things, and relationships are all what it's all about.
It's a very intense time right now.
Very intense.
Very intense time for everyone. People are learning their lessons. People are having to learn their lessons, or if not, something happens.
Right.
Meaning they either break up or, major challenges.
Right. And so it's fascinating because we're going through all of this stuff, and we need to understand kind of what our role is, and kind of the things that are making us react the way we are, because
absolutely.
We're definitely under reaction. So this is News of the Heart. We are definitely going to get to the heart of the matter with regards to relationships. So I'm very excited to have you back.
I'm so excited to be here. And we're going to talk about dating rules, which I think you thought was a bit controversial.
Oh, that's interesting.
My thoughts on that, and about jealousy, which is
huge.
Really incredible. Sometimes it's logical, sometimes it's not. So I want to talk about the source of that. I want to talk about this thing called codependency versus interdependency. Codependency being the unhealthy aspect, interdependency being the healthy aspect of a relationship. Just different really key pieces of relationship. And I encourage people to call in if you have questions about your relationship.
Victoria and I are going to do a show every month. Check on our Facebook. That will let you know when we're doing the live taping, because this show, when you hear it, will not be live. So if you want to know when we're doing it, check on our Facebooks, because that will be the time that we post.
Absolutely.
All right. So yeah, let's start with the dating rules, because that's okay. One place where we can begin, and then we can move into.
Yeah, I mean, people. I just did some other shows as well talking about dating rules, and people were like, no, I don't want that. That's not okay. Because, I just feel that, one of my rules is, you need to wait at least 5 dates, maybe a month, maybe 6 dates before sex happens. Right. Because there's this thing called emotional intimacy versus physical intimacy. And with physical intimacy, the reason I'm so opposed to people having sex so quickly in a dating scenario is because we emit this very funny little amazing hormone called oxytocin that causes us to want to nest with the other person in a way that we ignore the red flags. Because it's such a drive. We cuddle and we have sex and we get all intimate physically, and we want to nest with that person. And that oxytocin is playing a mind trick.
Yeah.
It's a biological component of ourselves too, but it does not necessarily give us good judgment.
Right. And I'm going to talk about oxytocin because I did a course, or I did a coaching program where we talked about the 3 brains, which is your head, your heart, and your gut. And oxytocin became a huge piece of one of the times when we were talking, especially with the heart and the emotional connection. But the physical connection of oxytocin is actually it's very interesting, because a lot of relationships, they last between that year and that 2-year mark. That's when oxytocin stops. So it can actually, it is the honeymoon.
It is.
It's not we think the honeymoon period is when you get married and stuff, but I think that was when people used to get married after just meeting, or, arranged marriages. So,
And once that stuff wears off, you might look at your partner or and go,
differently.
I wouldn't even hang out with that person if I knew all these things. So, or if I'd paid attention to all these things. And that's what's most important here is that really the sex piece and the overly cuddling and overly being with the other person at the beginning part of the relationship is not a good idea. You need to have a really cool head to assess the person you're with. And I'm a therapist. Most of the people are coming in because they have relationship troubles.
Absolutely.
So let's try and head that off. Let's try and prevent that. Let's be a little preventative where that is concerned. I think that's powerful. So I say, if you're dating someone new, they're hot, they're amazing, they're sweet, they're awesome, take time before you have sex. Don't be so modern.
Right. Yeah,
But you're not. Are you dating?
Yes,
right now? Yes,
I am.
You're dating.
Yes.
So you're not so on board with what I'm saying, I don't think.
No, it's not. It's for different reasons.
Yeah.
It's not the quick into sex. See, for me, intimacy is through the eyes. I mean, I connect with people's souls. Sex is definitely a way that I can connect in with their energy the closest. But I totally agree with you. I mean, I've done both, and I don't know necessarily that there was a huge difference in how I felt once, because I think I connect differently. But
maybe because you have a really developed intuition.
That's true too.
Maybe if a person has a developed intuition, they can kind of look beyond the oxytocin. Although I don't know.
Oxytocin, it's
very powerful.
It's very
powerful.
Seductive.
Yeah, and the other thing that I say to people is don't. Another rule is don't let go of your own life. Don't speak to them every day. Don't call and text every day, checking in. People get really, really anxious in this day and age of fast texting. There, boom, you text, you get an answer. You message, you get an answer. Boom, boom, boom. It's like you got to totally, in my opinion, slow that down, because people are losing their own life. They're losing their own rhythm, their own routines, their own self-care routines, and that is causing them to go, what about me? What's happening to me? I'm lost. I don't matter anymore. I'm not valuable anymore.
And that's creating the codependency, because once that starts, then you tend to need that to continue. And with people, like with texting, you're right, it's so immediate that you don't have to call anymore. You just text and you chat away.
And I think texting, I like texting because it's a good informational thing. Where are you? I'm here. Are you there?
Right.
I'm there.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But people are having full-blown emotional
connections,
conversations via texting.
Yeah, it's pretty funny these days. I mean, people can be in front of each other and texting each other, and I think that's hilarious. But
it's too much. It's not. It's really a shortcut.
Yeah.
A shortcut to intimacy, and people are building full conversations. I mean, a client of mine was telling me how she broke up texting, and I thought, wow, it's just too. It's way too much of a shortcut, I feel.
Right.
And
I like that you say, to do it, once or twice a week instead of, because in the beginning there's this need to make sure that they're still there, or they're still interested in, and like texting or calling is going to actually prove that, because after a certain period of time, that is going to slow down, and so then you're going to get worried.
Well, there's
and
an
think
addiction to this,
wrong.
what you're talking about. It's very
Absolutely.
addictive. It's like, oh, I've got to get that high. I've got to get that confirmation. I've got to get that affirmation. People then become too habituated and used to not checking in with themselves and grounding themselves in what do they want and what do they need. And codependency, this is what we were just saying. Let's really define it. A very quick definition is your self-esteem rises and falls based on what the other person is saying or not saying to you. Right. It's a real quick definition. But really a tenet of codependency is you don't know what you're feeling anymore. You're not in touch with your boundaries, with your wants, likes, needs. And I see this so, and also people's family. It started in the family. So I don't know what your family upbringing was like, but the thing is that family environment that trains a person to have their needs be completely on the back burner in favor of, let's say, the mom or the dad, they train themselves to really not have a sense of connection with their own need and their own need process.
Right.
And that need process of who am I and what do I want and where am I going and what's my routine and what do I need to be okay? Do I need to work out? Do I need to eat certain ways? Do I need to, have a vitamin? Do I need to not eat carbs? Do I need to not be, what's my rhythm? I need to sleep in the morning. I need to get up in the morning. But suddenly that's all out the window because my partner is a night person.
Right,
right. Or, it's like, they're a night person. Now I've become a night person.
Our desire to please others is, it's huge. Like you said, it completely has to do with the fact that we have our identity by the ages of 6 or 7, or whether it's our identity, but it's how we have a
worldview.
Yes, and how we see the world and how we see relationships. So
it's pretty solid by then too.
Very
solid by then.
Because all this unconscious work that we have to do and subconscious work.
Right.
It's crazy.
And we're learning that other people's wants, needs are priority. And that we're low priority. And because there's consequences for having our needs on the table in the family dynamic, in the family culture. So then when we bring that into our adult relationships, it's like, I don't know what I want. In fact, I've seen people have full-blown anxiety attacks when I am requiring them through the therapeutic process to find out what they want and need and to be clear about that and to express that in the therapeutic context. And they're like, they're having literally palpitations and sweats and anxiety because they're being asked to look at their needs because the consequence growing up was negative when they expressed their needs.
And also within, it's not just our family situation. It's very much part of a subculture as well as, in the universal, collective unconscious. It's very much there that, especially as women, but men too, but especially as women.
Absolutely.
We're nurturers. We're here to help other people, and we don't focus on ourselves. We think that's selfish, and I like your bit about selfiness versus selfish.
That's right. Selfie versus selfish.
Yeah. We have to look at so much when it comes to relationships, but that need to please, that need, to, what was it that as I was growing up, it was like you can be seen but not heard sort of thing.
Well, I think that the school system also is all about that. And I'm not saying anarchy is the way. I'm saying we do need to, to conform a bit, but and be part of a system. But I think that what I see so prevalently in my practice, and when I coach and when I do talks, people talk, there's this inability to have a relationship in which they are as valued,
right,
and as seen and as heard as would be for their soul to feel okay.
Right.
For their soul to feel okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's so much, and there's so much we could talk about. We could probably do 10 shows on relationships for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's the cornerstone of it all, isn't it?
It is. It really is. But when we look at, the physical, again, the physical versus the emotional, there's some people that will never have an emotional connection with people.
100%.
We think it's love based on what our family, how we were brought up.
Very
we
hidden.
Think it's love.
Yeah.
But it's fear.
100%. I work with couples in my office, and people have been together 10, 15 years, and only in the office will they feel a sense of safety because there are parameters and boundaries to reveal even just a little bit of themselves, just even a little bit of them. And they've had kids together, and they've been together,
Exactly.
and you know what I mean? But yet, they're no longer, all of the things that kept them together pre-kids, for example. They partied, and they had fun, and they went out. Now they have kids. They can't party. They can't go out. They need to stay. So they haven't built an emotional intimacy.
Right.
They have not built an emotional intimacy. And in dating, when you're looking for your life partner, which a lot of people are, and if you're just having fun, dating, whatever, with no intention, this is going to be not as relevant.
Actually, I wish more people did that, though.
Just having fun, dating.
Well, because we get so caught up in it being the one, right? We have to, it's like, as soon as we meet somebody, it's like, well, okay, so what would it be like if with their last name, and like we go into all of this fantasy world, right? Because
the problem is that a lot of women are, doing the biological clock thing.
Absolutely.
And a lot of women are, saying, it's time. I'm 35 and let's go. We got to do this thing. And so this advice is very much for them. I would feel
right.
that you've really got to be looking out for the red flags and looking out for what's really there, as opposed to blinding yourself and wasting a bunch of time with oxytocin-laden decisions. The love drug, right?
It is. It's definitely the love drug.
But if you're past childbearing and you're not so much interested in that particular type of partnership, you're just sort of looking for more of a depth of relationship.
Yeah.
This is very good as well, because what people encounter a lot is commitment phobic people.
Especially as you get older. That's one of the first questions I always ask is,
what?
How long is your longest relationship?
Oh, wow.
Because
good question.
Well, because there's too many men out there right now that have never had
anything long
term, or like 2 years is the maximum. It's like, well, then you're a commitment phobic.
Yeah.
I mean,
you need to really look out for these people, because they're very seductive.
Yeah.
And they're excellent. They're fantastic communicators, and they're very, very. They bring you into their web, and lying is a massive part of it. And as soon as they feel that you need them, or here's what.
Let's go to break first.
Okay.
We'll come back, because we should take a break, and we'll be right back with News for the Heart with Victoria Lorient-Faibish, and we're talking all about relationships. So keep tuned in. Hi, I'm Laurie Huston, and I have a great show on bmajor.org called News for the Heart. I'm an intuitive counselor, coach, and teacher with professional qualifications and certifications, as well as natural clairsentient and claircognizant abilities. I've been on my spiritual path for over 20 years, and during that time have acquired, through extensive studies, teachings, and sacred texts, over 30 different healing modalities, which are continuously being added to, as life is an ongoing journey. My passion is on relationships, limiting beliefs, energy that is blocking you, and awakening consciousness as we become more heart-centered. You can find out more about me at my website, intuitivesoul.com, or call me at my toll-free number, 1-855-444-SOUL. That's 1-855-444-7685, and I'd be honored to connect with you. Let's get to the heart of what matters.
Want to know where you can hear Laurie Huston's News for the Heart? Well, that's easy. You can tune in to Laurie via Clear Channel's iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, and at bmajor.org. Now, back to Laurie Huston and News from the Heart.
And we're back. This is News for the Heart. We're getting to the heart of the matter. We've got Victoria Lorient-Faibish here. We're talking about relationships. We sort of ended right at the break about talking deeply about those commitment phobias that a lot of people have, and especially as you get older, it's definitely something to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, there are many, many case studies I can speak about commitment phobic people, and you're in a commitment phobic or with a commitment phobic person when, as soon as you start to relax, have needs, express your needs, the person you're with just hightails it out of there, or gets anxious and can't hear you, and they cannot be present for anything that they perceive is pressure on them. As soon as they perceive it, it's not actually sometimes, but as soon as they perceive it as pressure, responsibility, they tend to want to leave very, very quickly. And they wish they didn't. I mean, I work with commitment phobes. These are tortured beings, okay?
Right.
They come from majorly dysfunctional, violent backgrounds, or even just very cold backgrounds, and so their and the people in their life have the main relationships, mother, father, sister, brother, have presented to them in ways that have caused them tremendous anxiety and tremendous pressure. Maybe they're sibling was an addict, maybe their parent was an addict, maybe their mother was a depressive, and it was always the pressure on them to be strong, to be the one that solved the problems. And so they're like they're tapped out.
Right.
They're tapped out.
Right.
And so they, as soon as they detect another person's need, they have not learned how to draw a boundary, and they're out.
Which is hugely important. Boundaries are a big deal. It also makes me think, when you're talking about it, the narcissist, which is really...
I talk a lot about the narcissist.
Yeah.
It's a massive situation.
It is, because they don't appear to be able to see a relationship with other. It's always about me. What can I get from it?
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, most of our relationships are based that way. It's a very ego-driven, we're a very ego-driven society. We do think about, what our needs are versus others. But then there's always that opposite person. There's always that nurturer that wants to help, wants to fix, wants to, sees the potential. I've always been that person that can see the potential of somebody. So, you get caught up, right? You get caught up in that game and not, okay, so what's real? What's the potential? What's my intuition? It can be like a crazy little game that we play
I tell
with
people,
ourselves.
don't fall in love with someone's potential. Don't do it.
It's...
Because people, you have to be able to know, the question you have as the nurturer is, do you get tapped out? Do you get resentful?
Yeah, see, I don't usually. I don't ever see the problem. It's only when the other person feels like I'm nurturing too much, right? Then they feel that, and they pull back.
It's interesting you say that, because there, a lot of people get caught up in sort of habituated patterns. Overly generous, overly giving, overly pleasing. And I see that a little bit as an addiction often with people, where you get a little bit of a high because somehow you feel like you've provided the solution, you've provided the peace where there was chaos, the ease where there was a problem, or you've been the one that solved the issue, or you're the one that's, it's like, oh, you're so amazing, and people are so grateful, and there's a real self-esteem boost.
There's also the issue of, well, I'm right? Like, it's, I'm right. This is what you need to do. I'm right. Like, just listen to me. But, that, and then you go through your own drama as a child of...
The solutioner. This is the pattern of the solutioner.
Plus, you go through your drama as a child of needing to be heard.
Right.
I want to be heard.
Right.
So when that comes back at you, it's triggering your need to be heard. Yes. But I know I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm intuitive, I've got all, I know I'm right.
Yeah.
So, it's a definite game that you have to be very aware of yourself and the games that you play.
Yeah. The question I get often with people is, how do you have a healthy relationship? How does that, I've been in a 22-year marriage approximately. And so I'm really about, walking the talk of the long-term passionate relationship. Long-term passionate relationship. And how does that happen? And it's very important to know that happens by having, I don't know if people can see it, you start, whoops, I just pounded that microphone. You start two individuals. And I think that's very important.
You do need this closer.
I do need, okay, sorry. So I'll do my hand here. So we have two individuals.
Yeah.
Two independent individuals who have lives, who have self-esteems, who have boundaries, who know who they are. They've done their own personal work.
Right.
And then they come together and they meet. And in that meeting, they create an interdependence, meaning, we have similar, some similar wants and needs. We have some similar routines. We have some similar lifestyle habits. But then we come apart again. So there's got to be this in a long-term passionate relationship.
Right.
It has to be two independent people coming together in an interdependent way with mutual needs met and heard, and then comes apart and then comes together and then comes apart and comes together. That is so important. There cannot be this.
Right.
This is codependency. This is codependency. The codependency is where a person, I see it all the time, and that's why they end up in therapy feeling depressive, feeling anxious. They are not having their own independent, boundaried life. And then, they're like, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I need, and then they learned that as a child, and then they met a person that just continued with that pattern. So if you're interested in a long-term, passionate relationship, the dating rules that we've begun with are trying to create the foundation for that, where you don't lose yourself in the other person.
And I think the other piece to that is that, there are a lot of people that are in the case where they're dating. I think right now, for whatever reason, there are more, single women and men than ever in history. So there's a lot of people that are dating. And I think they're dating because it's easier. Oh, there's so many. I mean, the online dating scene, it's an
Tinder.
addiction.
I keep hearing about Tinder. What's that?
It's just such an addiction because you get addicted to the oxytocin and you just want that instead of building a relationship. And then there's the spiritual people that say, oh, well, we're really not monogamous people. And I don't believe that.
Yeah. I don't either.
The only way to really create true intimacy is to have like that deeper connection. Like you can't create pure intimacy if you don't have a long-term type relationship. It's kind of like the tantric way. I mean, it's it's such a beautiful thing. It's incredibly powerful. But to do it, you have to be able to have complete trust with the other person. And
well, let's talk about trust.
Sure.
How do you build trust? How do you keep trust? And how do you deal with once trust is broken?
Yeah.
What to do once trust is broken.
Yeah.
It's really, please don't break trust, because it is just such a challenge to build that. And trust and forgiveness are hand in hand. When trust is broken, there is the need for forgiveness to have trust back as part of the building of the path. But if there is a breach in faithfulness, for example, it's very hard to forgive, and people are very challenged with that. And the road to forgiveness is to give yourself permission to not forgive initially.
Initially, sure.
Initially, you got to give yourself permission to say, I have the right to not forgive.
And see, that's where this sexual thing becomes, it's such a tool, right? If we weren't taught that it was such a tool and that it's a way to create intimacy, but it's not a tool to be used. And I think that's where people get so caught up. That's where, that's never been an issue for me. I don't have jealousy issues, although
really?
I know a lot of people who do.
Yeah.
And I don't have this issue where, other than the fact of safety these days, I don't really have an issue with whether somebody, because that doesn't take away the trust.
So if your boyfriend has sex with someone else, you're okay? Is that the agreement you guys?
Definitely.
Okay.
I don't want an open relationship.
Okay.
But if something were to happen, they went on vacation, things happen. And I don't see that as changing the dynamic of the relationship as long as the honesty's there,
There you go. The honesty has to be there, right?
Right.
If it's behind the back and then it's found out, that's just, there's no, what do you do with that? You don't. You just, it's very difficult to recover from lying.
And I think there's so many women out there that would rather just break up than communicate, because it's much more difficult to talk about your true, authentic feelings. True. And it's easier to just break up.
But sometimes breaking up is necessary if there's someone who's mistreating you. You've got to just. I'm a big believer that if believe people when they show you who they are versus when they tell you what they tell you they are. No, don't be so interested in what they're telling you they are. Be interested in what they're doing and what they're showing you.
Right.
And that's an important thing for people to not ignore. But I agree with you. If there's a good foundation, you have children, you have a life together, and there is some kind of a breach, talk about it. Get into therapy about it. Don't just leave.
Right.
Get into therapy, because this is just a symptom of a bigger problem underneath.
A different problem. It has
exactly.
It may have nothing to do with you as a person. It's just their way of coping or dealing with something.
In couples, the stat is that in couples that have cheating, they're usually, the problem is that there's no communication, that there's
Right.
no intimate, there's a sort of a hidden side. They're going into their own cave. They're coming home at night from work, and all they're doing is just they're just mumbling to each other and going into their own little caves. So this is really important, that's the problem, and so they're just seeking it out somewhere else. And the person who's seeking it out somewhere else the main problem is that they didn't go and say, hey, where are you? What's happening? I miss you. I need you. Where are you? And maybe they did try to do that 10 times, and all they got was, I don't know. It's all good. Whatever. Denial. I don't care. I don't,
Not wanting to get into it
That's
because they don't want to have another fight.
A conflict, exactly. And they don't have the tools to navigate, conflict. And I tell people when they start to work with me is that, I test them for the notion of contempt.
Right.
Do they have contempt for one another?
Mm. Mm.
If you get to that place, people, it's a really hard road up.
Right.
So try to deal with yourselves therapeutically before you get to contempt.
And passion is also an interesting piece, because people think that once they've lost the passion.
Right.
And
you need discipline to keep passion.
Right.
You need discipline. People say discipline to keep passion. Yes. If you are not disciplined about keeping your intimate passion happening, it's never going to happen. Because of course, once you have kids, or once you have, financial issues, and once you have routine, and once it's February and you're, and the seasonal affective disorders happening, or you put on some weight, or whatever it is, that's all going to take its toll if you don't have the discipline to take time for each other, to appreciate each other every day. I tell people, tell your partner that you love them every day. Tell them what is important. Right now, I want everyone to imagine that their partner is not an infinite person in their life, meaning they are temporary. We are all going to pass away. We are all going to leave each other. Appreciate what you have, because it's all impermanent. It's all impermanent. This person in front of you is impermanent. And so appreciate that person. Value that person, and create a culture, a partnership culture, which is the book I'm working on right now, partnership culture. Work on the partnership culture of appreciation, of acknowledgement, of listening, of gentleness, of kindness. These are really important, simple concepts. And people say, oh, it's really difficult. Yeah, most things are really difficult. You need discipline. Nothing happens without discipline. Cut the sarcasm. Cut the quips. Cut the making fun of. Cut all that.
The expectations,
yes,
the demands.
Exactly. The demandingness, the defensiveness.
Yeah.
It's a relationship killer. It's the number one relationship killer in my view, is defensiveness.
I could see that, because that's that place where, one, you think you're right. I mean, it's all an ego thing, right?
And defensiveness specifically comes from a place that someone feels constantly like they're being attacked.
Right.
Whether they're being attacked or not.
It's always a perception.
It's always a perception that they're being attacked, and they need to correct the other person and to tell them.
Right.
And I'll tell you. Right?
Yeah.
And defensiveness is such a huge piece. When I call a person on defensiveness, and I very gently say, so you appear like you need to defend yourself right now. And I stop them and I say, what in your feeling state right now is responsible for this tone that you have, this aggressive, defensive tone? What's happening? And they go into defensiveness again. I said, I hear you, but just for this exercise, tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
What is it that you feel like, well, you're criticizing me.
Yes, of course.
You're criticizing, you're judging me.
Right.
Tell me what I said that was judgmental. Because I wasn't judging. I was simply pointing out an observation about someone.
Right.
But there is this insecurity within them, that there is no confidence there, and then they feel this judgment is attacking their very being, and then they need to attack back.
Right.
So it's all about finding your own confidence, your own self-esteem, your own sense of, I'm okay. I don't need to attack back. I'm okay. That means you need to do your own personal work.
Yeah.
You need to do your own personal work.
You have to be so aware of when you're getting triggered.
Do
and
that
why.
work.
Yeah. It's the most important thing.
because you'll ruin your relationship if you don't.
Yeah. I mean, you can't fix another person. You can't change another person. The only person you have any form of being in charge of is yourself. And how we're perceiving events is so key to how we're perceiving, the relationship.
You got to accept the other person for who they are, and if who you discover they are is absolutely abhorrent to you, then yeah, you got to leave them. But first, start with acceptance.
But even that, like even the leaving part, like.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that if you are okay,
unless it's physical abuse, which I would never.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm like physical abuse and also verbal abuse, constantly berating and yelling, this kind of stuff. If you've drawn the boundary and that continues, you can't hang out without too long.
Yeah, it always comes up as to whether it's an opportunity for you to grow.
Always.
And sometimes the growth is in leaving, because that gives you a strength that a lot of people don't have, right? Like there's this piece where people aren't able to leave, and so it's an empowerment to be able to leave and say, I can do this, and I can be on my own, and that's a huge thing for a lot of women.
You're very right about that. It's an opportunity for growth.
Right.
It's not just about leaving just because it's not not perfect.
Right. Because it'll never be perfect, and there'll always be somebody else.
Exactly. You're 100% correct on that. But at the same time, if there is physical and profound emotional abuse, you're absolutely right. It's just, I believe that you can't, if you've told someone, don't talk to me that way, if you've said, I will not participate in this kind of violent communication, if you've said, it doesn't work with me, I cannot absolutely tolerate this type of treatment, I love you and I'm not going to be able to be present for this type of violent communication, all these types of words, all these types of boundaries, and they still are rageaholics, raging at you in an undisciplined way, you can't fix that. No. You can't fix that. They got to go and get some help.
Right.
They're addicted to treating, they're addicted to outletting their emotions in a violent way.
Right.
And that's theirs to fix, not yours to fix. So short of that, that's not fixable. You can't fix that. You need therapy. They need therapy. They need, who knows if you can stay together. Mm-hmm. But short of that, so many other circumstances are not about leaving them, are about hanging in and really changing the dynamic in a disciplined way. And sometimes it's as simple as we create a date night once or twice a week. It's as simple as turn off the television, turn off the electronic devices, turn off the things that are distracting you from each other.
Right. Huge.
It's not that difficult, yet people are, stop the drinking, less drinking, less TV, less numbing out, less all of that. That can just change a relationship. Become spiritual, start to meditate.
Right.
Start to read works of various things, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, simple stuff like that, and then more complicated stuff that I'm sure you can suss out in your travels, and I can recommend some books as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean there's so much that people can
do other than leave.
Exactly. And you would so many
or
so
cheat
many opportunities.
Or lie.
Right.
So there's so many things you can do other than leave, cheat, or lie. I just want to say.
No, it's true.
People take the easy way.
We do.
And you need discipline. It goes back to the D word, discipline and discernment. Discipline and discernment. You need that. There's no way around the mountain. You got to go through the mountain. You got to go through the mountain. And that's the only way to get to true rich relationships.
Right. We're going to go to our next break. You are listening to News for the Heart. We're getting to the heart of what matters with regards to relationships. We've been talking with Victoria Lorient-Faibish, and we will be right back. Hi, I'm Laurie Huston, and I have a great show on bmajor.org called News for the Heart. I'm an intuitive counselor, coach, and teacher with professional qualifications and certifications, as well as natural clairsentient and claircognizant abilities. I've been on my spiritual path for over 20 years, and during that time have acquired through extensive studies, teachings, and sacred texts over 30 different healing modalities. which are continuously being added to, as life is an ongoing journey. My passion is on relationships, limiting beliefs, energy that is blocking you, and awakening consciousness as we become more heart-centered. You can find out more about me at my website, intuitivesoul.com, or call me at my toll-free number, 1-855-444-SOUL. That's 1-855-444-7685, and I'd be honored to connect with you. Let's get to the heart of what matters.
Want to know where you can hear Laurie Huston's News for the Heart? Well, that's easy. You can tune in to Laurie via Clear Channel's iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, and at bmajor.org. Now, back to Laurie Huston and News from the Heart.
Welcome back. This is News for the Heart. We are getting to the heart of what matters. We've been talking with Victoria Lorient-Faibish. We're talking about relationships. And although we've been kind of going all over the place, it's been a nice flow to how this has been going, and I really enjoy it. Let's go back to jealousy, because I think that's a big piece in relationships. I think a lot of women,
A lot of people, not just women, men, women, you know.
Jealousy seems to be a thing that
very pervasive.
Can really ruin a relationship, though.
Oh, yeah.
For so many reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you know, let's say there's a good relationship happening, and the person experiences jealousy even though it's a good relationship, meaning it's a logical jealousy. It's just people show up in my office like, I've got a problem with jealousy. You know, she is a great person, but I find myself feeling jealous for no reason. Maybe the only reason is they didn't call that night, or the only reason is they got busy, or the only reason is, you know, whatever it is. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good. And so we got to look at the source of jealousy and then the solution to jealousy. Let me just cut to the solution. There's a very important thing called self-care. As soon as someone is feeling jealous for no reason, they're overly involved codependently in the other person's life. Get back to your own schedule. Get back to your own routine. Get back to the gym. Get back to your vitamins. Get back to meditating. Get back to you.
Right.
Get back to you.
Yeah.
You know, and also if you're in a relationship with someone who's overly involved with something else, bring that person into your being and have a conversation about boundaries, about let's say it's a family with kids and he or she is overly involved in other things and is not giving enough to the relationship, and so there's a jealousy around their time. They're not with them enough. They're not supporting them enough. So the question is, the issue is you want to vulnerably communicate. So vulnerable communication, meaning a vulnerable saying, as opposed to,
hard.
No, I know, you don't do this, and you don't do that, and you, judge, as opposed to, I'm not feeling supported enough. Right. I need to have more of you right now. So there's, you know, vulnerable communication plus self-care is the solution to a lot of jealousy. Right.
And, you know, whether it's real or perceived, I mean, that's the other problem is, you know, where it comes from.
Right. So so let's first look at the source of it. The source of it often is family of origin, whereby the child did not feel like they were heard, seen enough.
Right. Or their family, their parents, there was issues there as well, right?
Right. There could be some cheating there.
Yeah. That's usually, it happens somewhere.
Yeah. Or they favor one child over the other.
Right.
You know, that's huge when they favor the one child over the other. You know, maybe one is an exceptional student or an exceptional athlete, and then the other one is just sort of not getting the kudos because they're a poet as opposed to an athlete, you know, or whatever it may be. The family dynamic very much is where the child will grow up into a person that experiences jealousy or not. You know, the father might have abandoned the family because they had an affair, and then the mother is transmitting that type of insecurity onto the kids, and the kids are like, I can never trust men, I can never trust women, or whatever it is.
Right.
So these are the sources of it, obviously. But then, does that mean you are obligated to repeat that in your adult life? No. Repeat after me. I do not have to repeat what my parents did. Repeat after me. I do not have to repeat what my parents did. I can go beyond my parental teaching, and I can grow beyond them with discipline, with self-care and discipline.
because it's funny, because it's always a repeated pattern.
Absolutely. If you are unconscious.
Right. And sometimes even when you're conscious, you may
Right.
still choose somebody who that's part of their, because that's what we're attracted to, because that's what we believe love is.
Right. There's a familiarity with that type of patterning. But jealousy, by and large, and the other thing is, let's say you're in a relationship with someone who is lying, cheating, and you catch them, and so then they promise they'll never do it again, and then you're jealous, why are you in that relationship? That, and then there's an addiction to that type of spice,
right?
because
that drama, that addiction to that
to
type
excitement.
of, yes.
And that often comes from people who have grown up in either addiction households, or dramatic, chaotic households, and so they're like, that's what a fun relationship is.
Right.
That's what a fun relationship.
And that's what they think love is. Like that's their definition. It's not conscious, but it's.
And healthy is boring in a lot of these people's
there's a lot of people that
healthy is boring. And I just want to tell you, find the spice in the healthy. Find the deliciousness in kindness, in healthiness, in honesty, in I'm there for you no matter what. My God, it's so beautiful to have that. Mm-hmm. I'm lucky I do have that. And we're not lucky. We work darn hard at this relationship.
And that's the other thing. There are too many people that think that if it's hard work, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I disagree.
I totally disagree, especially with relationships. Yeah.
I don't think anybody can have a long-term passionate relationship if you don't prioritize and work hard to go, what are you feeling right now, and what do you need right now, and what do I need right now, and let's have a moment of really connecting. It doesn't have to be quantity communication. It just needs to be quality communication. And it doesn't have to be often, but it should be, when it is, quality, sincere, vulnerable. Vulnerable is such a key piece to healthy relationship.
It's interesting. One of the people that I've been looking at to date wants to create a contract. And the contract,
like a written contract?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
The contract is, for a certain period of time. Once a week, you get together to talk about, if there are any issues or, like that kind of thing. And so it's a very interesting way of looking at life. But it sets those boundaries so that you actually do. So if you're feeling anything, you discuss it.
So I am a big fan of an exercise called Initiate and Reflect.
Okay.
In long-term relationships, even in not so long-term relationships, as opposed to defensiveness and as opposed to accusatory you statements, which are highly judgmental and they're a big turnoff for most people. You're not going to get laid if you keep doing that.
No.
I promise you that. What you need to do is you need to start the statement with, I feel an emotion: mad, glad, sad, frustrated, confused, betrayed, judged, when I think you are not calling me often. So I feel abandoned when I think you don't call me enough. So that you're really perceiving it from an I statement, and the I think statement is, it's my movie. It's my movie of you. It's my perception of you. It's my story of you. And all that the other person has to do is reflect back to you what they heard.
Right.
Without defending it. They may feel accused, but they're in the exercise, they're not allowed to express that accusation. They simply have to reflect what they heard. And then they will have an opportunity to say, I feel frustrated, angry, when I think you are spending more money than we have.
Right.
For example.
Right. Yeah.
This is just an exercise for people who are in a relationship to be able to negotiate conflict.
Right.
And I love this idea of your boyfriend doing a contract for intimacy and vulnerability and connection.
It makes me think there was this one episode of Being Erica. I love that show.
I love that show. Oh, I love that show. I'm so glad you said that. It's such a great show.
Isn't it?
Which episode?
It was near, I think it was the first relationship she had with the guy from, I don't know, anyway, where she just had to really be authentic and vulnerable when she talked to him. Yeah. And I look at that episode and I think, can I be that vulnerable? Because she was really, really vulnerable.
Just truthful, yeah.
Yeah, that takes a lot out. Like that's harder than.
It's the hardest.
We can we can talk to our girlfriends about certain things, and we can
But why
write
not to our
things.
men?
Exactly.
We just do them a disservice by thinking they can't handle it. And, if they can handle it, I think that there's something you didn't, in other words, if they can't handle it, I'm encouraging a person to go, hang on, come on back. I want to hear your vulnerability.
Right.
I want to hear your vulnerability.
Right.
You have a right to be vulnerable too. You don't have to be a man. You can be a human. You can be a human.
Yeah. It's so fascinating.
So did you do that contract?
Not yet. We're still playing around as to whether that's actually going to do
I think that's so cool, though. I really do.
Yeah. It is.
And I'm in favor of that because to me it speaks to the thing that I speak about, which is discipline.
Right. Absolutely.
It's the only way to a good, healthy relationship is disciplined connection.
Right.
Sexual, emotional, spiritual, functional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. So we talked about jealousy, big problem.
Yeah. And in coupledom also, I just want to say in coupledom, this mic goes down a little bit.
Yeah, it went.
In coupledom, I would say that one of the things that is extremely important too is I tell people, make sure your blood sugar is balanced.
Oh yeah.
People have fights when they're hungry.
Right, not good.
No, make sure that when you come home from work, you have some protein right away, so you're not taking out your crap and your bad mood from the day on each other. So I say hummus is like a marriage saver, hummus and yogurt. Have a snack. A big problem for couples is they don't have the discipline of having their food situation taken care of in a disciplined way. And so they come home, there's no food, they're eating late, and they're fighting, and they're causing damage, and they're building the walls of resentment. So one of the big things, so I've given you guys a tool, which is the initiate and reflect. A second tool is make sure you have your food situation handled so that you're not taking out your blood sugar issues on each other.
I've done that.
Who hasn't? We've all done. That's why I talk about it, because it's very common. And
you don't even realize it.
Yeah, exactly. It's extremely common. And the other thing is replace defensive responses with vulnerable responses. Replace defensive responses with vulnerable responses.
Interesting, yeah.
When you feel like you're going to defend and attack, start with the feeling of, I'm feeling this. I feel afraid. I feel hurt. These are vulnerable statements. I feel not listened to. And people are much more they're going to respond so much better to you if you come to them in that way.
Right.
Versus you so-and-so, you do this and you're always. Stay away from those generalized statements.
Yeah, they're kind of deadly. But when you make those statements, then you realize that it's a judgment that you have about yourself. And look, you have to take responsibility.
You have to take responsibility.
Always in the nevers and the.
Totally. And apologize. If you've done something wrong, own it fast. Own it and apologize. You know how powerful, Laurie, it is for a person to apologize to another person? It is so powerful. So many people were not apologized to growing up by their parents.
Right.
And so when a person says, I made a mistake and I'm really sorry about that, and I'm going to really do my best to not repeat that, there is such healing that occurs in a relationship.
Yeah.
There is such healing. And I facilitate a lot of apologies in my work with couples because people are holding on to their hurt feelings because they feel like the person never said, I'm sorry.
Right.
I've said I'm sorry. Did you really say you're sorry?
Yeah, I've had lots of people say that, but I told you I was sorry. It's like, yeah,
no.
You didn't actually.
You didn't look in my eyes, take a moment, say it slowly, and really mean it.
Or even say it at all.
They think they said it.
Yeah, they said it in their head.
Oh, I said it in my actions. No. You got to say it in your words and in your actions. Right. And you got to work your darndest to not repeat what you've done. Listen, you owe yourself, your couple, your family, the responsibility of owning what you do and really, really owning and acknowledging how do you contribute to the mess. Because you're either contributing to the mess or you're contributing to the cleanup.
Right.
Contribute to the cleanup and own what you've contributed to in terms of the mess.
Yeah. And go back to the beginning, which is look at your self-esteem. Look at what you can do for you. Because if you're really, really upset, it's because there's something that you need.
Oh, yeah.
And
be vulnerable as you express that need.
It doesn't mean you need it from the other person.
Well, often we need it from the other person, but we need to get it from ourselves.
Right.
Do we have time to talk about narcissism, or we kind of...
We got a couple minutes, not a lot.
Yeah, okay. I just want to acknowledge, shout out to all the people out there that have grown up with narcissistic parents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Please be aware that happened, and try not to attract a narcissist into your partnership. Please try to be someone who doesn't become a narcissist because you were brought up by a narcissist.
Right.
If you're a young person and you were brought up by a narcissist, the tenet of a narcissist, the characteristics of narcissism are, they're always mocking you. It's all about them. They're the only emotion allowed in the room. They will not allow anybody else's needs to be on the table. It's only about their needs. Their feelings are more important. They're the victim always. You're always wrong. They're always right. That's, you've grown up with a narcissist if that is what you've grown up with.
Right.
And so that's very damaging, very scarring, very destroying. Work to not bring that into your life as an adult.
Awareness, right? Just become
right.
aware of your own issues. I mean, if you're in anything other than a place of peace and love, then it's you.
That's right.
It's your thing.
I want to do a show just about narcissism.
Okay.
I think that because it's so huge. So many people grow up in that damage. And I have over 400,000 views on my YouTube, and a good half of that are responses to my narcissism videos.
Wow. All right. Well, we do have to end.
All right.
It's been a great show. It's been a very lively,
good.
flowing
We have that
connection.
with me.
Which is great. All right. You have been listening to News for the Heart. We will have this up shortly, hopefully, and enjoy. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Have a question for Laurie and want to be on the next News from the Heart show? Drop us a line via instant feedback at bmajor.org. News from the Heart is brought to you by Intuitive Soul and is produced by Major Radio for Clear Channel's iHeartRadio and bmajor.org.